My brother, Jobless, moved in with our parents, taking my room. He didn't job hunt and lived on their support while I paid $3,000 monthly to help our father. My name is Jake. I'm 29 years old, and currently I reside with my parents. This scenario isn't quite what I envisioned for myself, yet here I am. Many might think that living at home in your late 20s implies a relaxed lifestyle, perhaps focusing on saving money or even laziness. However, my situation is quite the opposite. It's hardly an easy ride. I hold a position as a regional sales manager, which keeps me quite occupied. A significant portion of my job involves traveling. Typically, I'm on the road 2 to 3 times a month for meetings, conferences, or to meet clients. It's a rewarding career, and I'm thankful for it, despite the exhaustion that comes with frequent travel. Despite being away often, I prioritize being supportive and present for my parents as much as possible. Initially, my return to my parents' home was meant to be a short-term solution. I had been living independently in a modest apartment in the city center. However, everything changed when my father's health deteriorated. He had always been the backbone of our family, ensuring everything functioned seamlessly. But as his health faltered, it became clear that my mother needed additional support, both financially and emotionally. Consequently, I terminated my apartment lease and moved back to my childhood home. I thought my contributions would be sporadic, perhaps helping with groceries or paying a few bills, yet it soon became evident that their needs were greater. Medical expenses began to accumulate, and my mother left her job to care for my father full-time. With only their limited income, the financial burden intensified, and I found myself contributing more significantly, handling grocery bills, rent, and even some of my father's medical costs. Each month, I contributed around $3,000 to bridge the financial gap. It's a challenging situation. There are moments when I feel overwhelmed, tirelessly working to keep us financially solvent, but leaving them in their time of need was never an option. My parents had always provided for me, and now it was my opportunity to support them, even if it meant pausing my personal aspiration. Despite my earnest efforts to maintain harmony, the atmosphere at home was occasionally tense. My parents had their pride, and accepting assistance was difficult for them. My father, in particular, found it hard to come to terms with me covering all the expenses. He felt as if he had let us down as a provider, and no matter how much I reassured him, his sense of guilt persisted. One night, after a taxing day at work, I arrived home to see my mother sitting at the kitchen table looking weary and somber. "Hey, Mom," I greeted her as I placed my briefcase down. "Is everything all right?" Her eyes, filled with a deep sadness, met Jake. "It's been a tough day for your dad. He's upset, keeps saying he's a burden on you." I felt a sharp ache in my heart. I knew my father's pride was deeply hurt, but to hear it so directly made it even more painful. "Where is he?" I asked, trying to maintain a calm tone. "In the den," she answered with a gentle nod, suggesting I talk to him. Bracing myself for a tough conversation, I walked to the den. My father was in his old recliner, gazing vacantly at the TV, clearly lost in his thoughts. "Dad?" I began as I took a seat opposite him. He looked up, his face etched with weariness. "Jake, I didn't hear you come in. How was your trip?" "It was exhausting, but manageable," I replied, managing a slight smile. "Mom mentioned you've been feeling down." He chuckled bitterly. "Down is an understatement, Jake. Here I am, just sitting while you work tirelessly to pay my bills. How do you think that makes me feel?" Seeing the frustration and anguish in his eyes was heart-wrenching. My father had always been a pillar of strength and resilience, someone I deeply admired. Witnessing him so vulnerable and doubtful was difficult. "Dad, I'm here because I want to be. You and Mom gave me everything, my education, support during tough times. It's my turn to give back. This is all I can offer," I said, as my father shook his head, his fists clenched in frustration. "It isn't right, Jake. I should be the one supporting you, not the other way around. What kind of father am I?" Unable to provide for my family, his words were piercing, and I found myself at a loss for words. I wanted to reassure him that he remained my hero, that his contributions to my life were immeasurable. Yet I understood that for him, actions spoke louder than words. No matter what I said, he would continue to view himself as a failure, a burden. Time passed, and I maintained my routine, balancing my work with family obligations. The strain was becoming evident. Nights were restless, filled with worries about finances, my father's health, and the overwhelming responsibilities I shouldered. I felt trapped in a relentless cycle. Then, during a business trip, as I sat exhausted in my hotel room, my phone rang with an unexpected caller. It was my cousin Sarah, whose voice carried a mix of warmth and hesitation. "Hey, Jake, I hope I'm not intruding. I've heard about your situation and I just wanted to reach out." Surprised, I responded, realizing how much I had missed her presence. Sarah and I had been close as children, but had gradually lost touch. Her call, in a moment of such isolation, felt oddly comforting. "Hey, Sarah," I managed, trying to sound composed. "Yeah, things have been tough." Our conversation meandered through updates about her life, her job, and her family. Then, with a bit of hesitation, she addressed my circumstances directly. "Jake, I know this might be hard, but have you considered other ways to support your parents? You're contributing so much financially. Isn't there another approach?" Her question took me by surprise. Wrapped up in my commitment to provide, I hadn't stopped to consider any alternatives. As Sarah and I continued our conversation, it dawned on me that there might indeed be alternative ways to assist my parents without completely sidelining my own aspirations. That chat sparked an idea that resonated deeply, urging me to explore different options for managing my parents' expenses, perhaps through downsizing or seeking out financial aid programs that could alleviate some of our burden. Determined to pursue this new path, I was anxious about presenting the idea to my parents, unsure of their reaction but hopeful. Upon returning from my business trip, I gathered the courage to sit down with them and discuss my findings. Initially, they were reticent, my father particularly so, but after a thorough discussion, they agreed to at least consider some of the options. It wasn't an overnight solution, but it was a step in the right direction, a move towards a future where the responsibilities didn't solely rest on my shoulders. Gradually, as we implemented cost-cutting measures and explored various aids, things started to look up. Though the path was still fraught with challenges, there was a burgeoning sense of relief and a flicker of hope that we might just be able to navigate through this. Just as we began to experience a semblance of stability, another challenge loomed. My brother Alex had been facing I sat there, a profound sense of heaviness pressing down on me. It felt like a profound betrayal, as if all my contributions had been taken for granted, expected rather than valued. But it was clear their decision was final. This was going to happen, whether I approved or not. That weekend, Alex and his family arrived, bringing with them suitcases, children's toys, and boxes upon boxes of clothing. I watched from a distance as they settled into my room, claiming it as their own, while I moved into the small, cramped space downstairs. It felt more like a storeroom than a bedroom, barely fitting a twin bed and a dresser. After years of hard work and dedication to my career, I found myself marginalized, squeezed into a corner to accommodate my brother's inability to maintain steady employment. The atmosphere quickly became strained. Alex seemed to think he was doing me a favor by moving in, hardly recognizing the efforts I had been pouring into keeping our family stable. His wife, Lisa, was courteous, yet her glances carried a hint of judgment, perhaps critiquing my choice to live with our parents despite not knowing the full extent of my financial contributions. Their kids, though innocent, were naturally boisterous, a toddler of 3 and an infant just over a year old. They filled the house with constant activity and noise, transforming my once peaceful home into a hub of endless chaos. One evening, after a particularly demanding day at work, I returned to find everyone gathered around the dinner table, sharing laughter and stories as if they were the ideal family unit. The resentment that had been simmering within me since their arrival began to boil over. "Hey, Jake! You're just in time for dinner," Alex greeted me cheerfully, oblivious to the tension. "Mom made your favorite, lasagna." I managed a weak smile despite feeling unappreciated for the long hours I put in to sustain this very household. "Great," I replied dryly, taking a seat at the table. As we ate, conversation inevitably turned to Alex's job search, or the apparent lack of one. He casually mentioned taking his time to find the right fit. The frustration within me couldn't be contained. "Must be nice," I remarked, my tone dripping with sarcasm. Alex's expression changed as he caught the edge in my voice. "What's that supposed to mean?" he challenged. I paused, locking eyes with him, hoping my expression conveyed my exasperation. "It must be nice to take your time to figure things out while living rent-free in someone else's home." The words hung heavily in the air, marked by a tense silence as I saw anger flash across Alex's face. "I didn't ask for your charity, Jake. We're family. Families help each other out," Alex retorted. "Yeah, I'm well aware of what helping out means," I fired back, my frustration boiling over. "I've been shouldering the bills, managing expenses, and now I'm the one being sidelined to accommodate your comfort. It's not fair." "Jake," my mom interjected, her voice gentle and pleading, "please, Let's not escalate this, but I couldn't hold back the tide of emotions any longer. No, Mom, I can't pretend things are okay. I moved back here to support you and Dad, to ensure you were looked after. Now it feels like my efforts are being dismissed, like I don't even matter. My own room, the one I've funded, is being taken away, and I'm expected to just accept it? Alex rolled his eyes, clearly annoyed. Oh, come on, Jake. You're acting like you're some kind of martyr. No one forced you to move back. You chose to, and now you think we owe you? My anger peaked, and I stood up, pushing back from the table. Maybe I do sound like a martyr, but perhaps it's because I've been the backbone of this family for years, and I'm sick of being overlooked. With that, I left the table and stormed down to my small, temporary room, slamming the door behind me. The walls of the room seemed to echo back my frustration, a stark reminder of everything I'd given up and how little it seemed to matter. The following days were filled with a palpable tension. My parents attempted to act as if the outburst hadn't occurred, but the disappointment was evident in their eyes. They couldn't grasp the depth of my anger or my sense of betrayal. Meanwhile, Alex carried on as if he deserved all the support without a second thought to the impact on me. Returning home became something I dreaded, each day heavier than the last with resentment and bitterness. I felt trapped, caught in an unbearable situation, and it seemed like no matter how much I tried to express my feelings, my words fell on deaf ears. After enduring months of tension and feeling marginalized in what was supposed to be my sanctuary, I reached my breaking point, paying $3,000 a month to sustain everyone, only to be confined to a cramped space while Alex and his family enjoyed the comfort of my room was more than I could tolerate. The thought of continuing to pour out my hard-earned money to be treated as an afterthought was overwhelming. I realized it was time to take a genuine break. I needed to step away to clear my mind and consider my own desires. I had accrued a few weeks of vacation time and decided, for once in a long while, to use it solely for myself. No more attending to family needs, no more incessant accommodating. I initially contemplated a simple hotel stay somewhere peaceful and distant from the turmoil at home. Yet, as I pondered more, a mere hotel room seemed inadequate. I yearned for true relaxation, a place where I could genuinely unwind. My search led me to discover a resort about 2 hours from home that provided attractive rates for extended stays. Opting to stay there for a couple of weeks would actually cost less than my monthly contributions at home. Plus, I would escape the ongoing disputes and avoid the growing resentment each time I encountered Alex idly spending his days. I reserved my spot and packed up that very night, leaving without informing anyone of my whereabouts. My family would likely assume I was on another business trip. I had grown weary of justifying my actions. They wouldn't understand my need for space anyway. The drive to the resort was liberating, almost as if I was escaping a confinement I hadn't fully acknowledged until now. Arriving at the resort, I immediately felt a sense of release. The property was stunning, with palm trees flanking the driveway and a lobby that was expansive and bathed in sunlight. It was the antithesis of the cramped quarters back home, and I felt reassured in my decision the moment I stepped inside. At the reception, a welcoming woman named Kara greeted me with a smile. "Welcome, Mr. Hayes," she said, noting my reservation details. "I see you'll be with us for a couple of weeks. I hope you find your stay enjoyable." "Thank you, Kara," I responded, barely hiding my relief. "I'm really looking forward to it." The room exceeded my expectations. It was spacious, featuring a large bed, a private balcony with a view of the pool, and a kitchenette. The decor was understated yet stylish, offering a sense of calm I hadn't felt in a long time. I settled in, brewed some coffee, and sat on the balcony, soaking in the serene atmosphere. The air was fresh, the environment tranquil, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I took a deep breath and relaxed. The ensuing days were nothing short of transformative. I spent my days lounging by the pool, wandering local hiking paths in the afternoons, and indulging in quiet dinners at the resort's dining area each evening. Freed from the need to attend to anyone else's demands, to navigate the tension at home, or to maintain a facade of contentment, I relished the independence. For the first time in a long stretch, my time was entirely my own. One evening, while enjoying a meal in the resort's lounge, I initiated a conversation with a fellow guest, a man named Daniel, who appeared to be about my age. He was perched at the bar, a whiskey in hand, and offered a friendly nod when our eyes met. "Long day?" he queried, lifting his glass in a friendly gesture. I chuckled, a genuine sense of ease washing over me. "Something like that, just here to unwind a bit," I replied. Daniel smiled and took a sip of his whiskey. Aren't we all? I'm trying to escape work-related stress myself. What brings you here? There was a brief pause as I considered how much to divulge. Daniel's relaxed nature made it easier to open up. Family stress, really. Just needed a little break from it all, I admitted. He responded with a nod of understanding. Makes sense. Sometimes stepping away is exactly what's needed. We spent the remainder of the evening exchanging stories about our jobs, our families, and other life experiences. I found myself sharing details about my home life, my role as the family's financial pillar, and how my brother had recently encroached. His advice resonated with me deeply. Walking back to my room, I mulled over his words. I had always prioritized my family's needs above my own, often at the expense of my personal well-being and financial stability. Perhaps it was time to start setting some boundaries to prioritize my own needs for a change. The next several days passed in a rejuvenating haze of self-care. I took leisurely strolls on the beach, enjoyed restful afternoons napping, and even pampered myself with a spa massage. With each day, I felt increasingly unburdened, more in tune with myself and less consumed by familial obligations. One sunny afternoon, while relaxing by the pool with a book, I noticed Kara, the welcoming receptionist who had checked me in, passing by. She greeted me with a warm smile and took a seat next to me. "Enjoying your stay?" she inquired. "More than you can imagine," I responded, placing my book down. "This retreat has been everything I needed." She looked out towards the pool, nodding in agreement. It's remarkable how a bit of time away can help things fall into perspective. A change of scenery often makes all the difference. As we chatted, I found myself confiding in her as I had with Daniel. There was an ease and openness about the people here that made me feel comfortable and unguarded. However, as the end of my vacation neared, a sense of dread began to set in. The thought of returning to my parents' house, to that cramped room, and the ongoing family strife weighed heavily on me. I realized I didn't want to go back to sacrificing my happiness for others. One evening, while packing my bags, I paused on the balcony overlooking the sunset. It struck me forcefully. I didn't have to return. I wasn't bound to continue a life that felt more like a burden than my own. The realization was both daunting and liberating. I had long felt trapped as if there were no alternatives. Yet now, I saw a path forward. I could secure my own place, start anew, and build a life that was genuinely mine. The following morning, I checked out of the resort with mixed feelings of melancholy and anticipation. Kara was at the front desk, and her smile was as warm as ever. "Heading home?" she asked as she handed me the final receipt. I hesitated, then a firm resolve took hold. "Actually, I think I'm on my way to a new start." Her smile broadened. "Well, wherever you're headed, I hope you find everything you're looking for." As I left the resort, I felt a profound sense of freedom, the kind I hadn't experienced in years. I didn't have a definite plan, but I knew that for the first time, I was truly steering my own course. Moving away from my parents' home marked a new chapter, one where I had my own space and a newfound independence that invigorated my spirit. I secured a modest, affordable apartment close to my work. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine, and I was committed to living on my own terms. However, my family seemed to have other ideas. A few weeks after settling into my new space, I received a call from my mom one evening. I would normally welcome her calls, but since moving out, I had noticed that our conversations often veered towards financial matters. "Jake, honey, how's the new apartment?" she asked, her tone bright but tinged with an undertone I couldn't quite identify. "It's good, Mom," I responded, keeping my voice cheerful. "I'm really enjoying it." There was a brief pause, and I could sense her discomfort over the phone. "Well, that's wonderful, sweetie, but I hate to mention this. We're finding things a bit tight here since you left." A familiar tightness gripped my chest. It hadn't been long since I moved out, and yet here was another hint at financial help. "Oh?" I replied, striving to sound calm. "What's happening?" "It's just that with Alex and the kids here, our expenses have increased. Groceries, utilities, it all adds up. Your dad and I are managing, but we could really use a bit of help just until we get back on our feet," she explained. I took a deep breath, containing my growing frustration. "Mom, I've moved out. I'm covering my own rent, utilities, everything now. I can't afford to support both households." There was a poignant silence on the line before she responded. "I understand, Jake," she said, her voice low, "but we're family, and families support each other." "I know that, Mom," I answered, trying to mask my annoyance, "but I've been the support for years. It's time I focus on my own life." She sighed deeply, and I could hear the disappointment in her voice. "All right, Jake, I just hoped you would understand." We ended the call, but the discomfort stayed with me. Despite my efforts to set boundaries and forge my own path, it seemed my family was not ready to release their hold. It felt as though they still expected me to prioritize their needs over mine. I reassured myself that they would adapt over time, that they would learn to manage without my financial support, but I was mistaken. Within a week, I received a call from Alex. I hadn't heard from him since I moved out, and part of me hoped he was calling to say he had started to take charge of his own responsibilities. However, the moment I picked up the phone, it was clear that was not the case. "Hey, Jake," Alex began, trying to sound casual. "How's the new place?" "It's good, Alex. What do you need?" I replied, cutting to the chase. "Well, things have been tough since you left," he said, attempting to keep his tone light. "Money's tight, and with the kids, it's been really challenging." I braced myself, already knowing what was coming. "What do you need, Alex?" I asked directly. He hesitated before listing out expenses that sounded excessive. "The kids need new clothes, Lisa is looking at after-school programs for them, and the car needs repairs. We just don't have the cash right now." My patience was wearing thin. "Alex, I'm not in the house anymore. I have my own expenses now. I can't fund yours as well." He became defensive. "Come on, Jake. You know I'm trying to sort myself out. I just need a bit of help till I land a steady job. A few $100 here and there can't hurt, right?" "A few $100?" I echoed, incredulous. "Alex, I've been shouldering thousands every month for years. Now that I've finally moved out, you still expect me to support you?" "We're family, Jake," he retorted, his tone growing stern. "Isn't that what family is supposed to do?" I had heard the same from my mom. This expectation that I would continue to sacrifice my own well-being for theirs, but I couldn't let it pass this time. "Family supports each other, Alex," I replied firmly. "But that doesn't mean I should continuously bail you out because you struggle with your responsibilities. I have my own life and bills to worry about. I can't keep draining my resources to fix your issues." There was a pause on the line, and I thought he might have hung up, but then he spoke again, his voice cold. "You know what, Jake? Maybe you have changed. Ever since you moved out, you act like you're above us, like you owe us nothing. But remember, you wouldn't be where you are without this family." The anger welled up inside me, but I managed to keep my voice level. "I haven't forgotten, Alex, but I can't let you manipulate me into covering every expense anymore. I'm also done letting you, Mom, and Dad make me feel as though I owe you everything." He scoffed, his words laced with scorn. "Fine, Jake. Be selfish, but don't come crawling back when you need something." He ended the call abruptly, leaving me seething. The conversation echoed in my head, underscoring the entrenched expectations they held, viewing my hard-earned success as their entitlement. In the following days, I tried to focus on my work and personal life, but the strain of the family dynamics loomed over me like a storm cloud. My mom continued to call, each time subtly pressing the financial hardships they faced, each attempt thinly veiled to coax me into capitulating. I stood firm, resolved not to be dragged back into the old patterns. Then, just when I started to believe that things might begin to stabilize, a knock at my door one evening broke the calm. Opening the door, I found Alex, his demeanor both annoyed and slightly desperate. "What are you doing here?" I asked, surprised and on edge. He didn't wait for an invitation, barging past me into the apartment. "We need to talk, Jake," he declared as I shut the door, a sense of foreboding washing over me. "What do you want, Alex?" I asked as he turned to face me, his face etched with frustration and a sense of entitlement. "Look, Jake, I don't know what's gotten into you, but we're family. We've always supported each other, and now when I really need you, you're just walking away?" he challenged. "Abandoning you?" I echoed, my voice tinged with disbelief. "Alex, I've supported you, Mom, and Dad for years at the expense of my own aspirations and well-being. And now, as I start to prioritize my own needs, you treat me like I'm the one at fault." He crossed his arms, his expression hardening. "It's not just about the money, Jake. It's about loyalty. You're turning your back on us in our time of need." I shook my head, frustration mounting. "No, Alex, I'm not turning my back. I'm setting boundaries. I have to take care of myself too." I was clear and resolute. "There's a difference, Alex. I'm exhausted from being everyone's fallback. It's time you took responsibility for your own life." His face turned red with fury. "Fine, Jake. If that's how you want it, then don't expect us to be there for you if things go wrong." I held my tongue, too drained and irate to continue the debate. He stormed out, the door slamming shut behind him, leaving me in a tumult of anger and a twinge of sorrow. Despite the familial rift, I felt an unfamiliar sense of tranquility, knowing I was finally prioritizing my own needs, even if it meant potentially losing family support. Taking a stand against continually funding Alex's lifestyle was tough, and I braced myself for the fallout. I anticipated my parents would struggle with my decision. For years, I had been their financial crutch, and setting these new boundaries was bound to cause friction. Initially, the backlash was as expected. My parents left messages tinged with disappointment and guilt. My mother's voice quivered as she recounted the sacrifices they'd made for me over the years, weaving guilt into her pleas. Then my father would call, his tone stern and full of reproach, expressing how let down he felt that I was abandoning our family tie. The criticism wasn't confined to my immediate family. Soon, it spread through the broader family network. Relatives I seldom interacted with were now reaching out to express their displeasure. My Aunt Marilyn was particularly vocal. One morning, she called, bypassing any pleasantries. "Jake, I just don't understand what's gotten into you," she began sharply. "Alex is your brother. He's having a hard time and you're just going to ignore his needs?" I took a moment to gather my thoughts, reminding myself that Aunt Marilyn wasn't aware of the extent of my past contribution. "Marilyn, I've supported him for years. I'm finally focusing on my own well-being, and I can't continue to finance his lifestyle. I have my own responsibilities now." She scoffed, clearly unimpressed. "Your own life? Do you think you would be where you are without your family? You owe your success to them, Jake." The old anger threatened to surge, but I kept my composure. "I haven't forgotten anything, Marilyn," I replied calmly. "However, sustaining him should not come at the cost of my own well-being." "Selfishness isn't a good look on you, Jake," she remarked coldly, ending the call abruptly. But the pressure didn't cease with Aunt Marilyn. In the following days, I received numerous calls from cousins, distant aunts and uncles, and even family friends, all drafted into this campaign against me. Each conversation was laden with guilt, accusing me of deserting my family and neglecting those who relied on me the most. But the situation escalated further when my parents began to deploy even more drastic measures. One evening, while preparing to meet friends, a text from my friend Dave popped up. "Hey, Jake, got a strange call from your mom. Is everything okay?" My heart sank. My parents had never before dragged my friends into our family issues, and I sensed trouble. I called Dave back immediately, my anxiety rising. "What did she say?" I asked. Dave's voice was uneasy, the discomfort apparent. "Well, she mentioned you've abandoned your family and claimed you've been acting unstable. It didn't seem like a casual check-in." I gritted my teeth, a mix of anger and humiliation washing over me. "I can't believe this," I muttered. "She's trying to manipulate me by tarnishing my reputation." Dave paused before responding. "Look, I don't know the full story with your family, but I know you. You're one of the most responsible people I know. Don't let this get to you." I thanked him, appreciating his support, yet the sense of relief was fleeting. Days later, an even more unsettling incident occurred. My manager called me into her office, her expression grave. "Jake, there's something we need to discuss," she began cautiously. "I received a call from someone claiming to be your mother. She seemed concerned about your well-being and hinted that you might be facing some issues." Heat rushed to my face, a mix of anger and embarrassment engulfing me. Now, my parents had stooped to contacting my employer, a disturbing new low. "I'm not sure what she told you, but please understand there's nothing wrong with me. My family was struggling to accept the boundaries I had set, which unfortunately led them to involve you in this personal matter. I'm truly sorry for that." My manager nodded, her face showing a mix of understanding and sympathy. "It's all right, Jake. Family issues can be tough. I appreciate your honesty." Leaving her office, I felt a mix of humiliation and anger. The breach of my personal life into my professional world marked a boundary my parents had carelessly crossed. They had implicated my friends, my boss, and even distant relatives in their attempts to coerce me into compliance. The relentless guilt tactics were wearing me down, forcing me to contemplate my next steps. I could either continue to endure this ceaseless pressure, or I could make a drastic change that might bring the tranquility I desperately sought. The decision was both daunting and freeing. I resolved to relocate to another state, seeking a fresh start away from the persistent demands and expectations. Choosing to move wasn't simple. A part of me still held on to the slim hope that my family might come to understand and respect my need for independence. However, I realized that expecting them to change was futile. They would likely always view me as just a means to support them financially. After securing an apartment in a city several states away, I began organizing my departure. I sold some possessions, packed my essentials, and prepared to leave behind the life I had known. It was a bittersweet realization, acknowledging that I was not just leaving my family, but also the friendships and connections I had formed over the years. Yet, as I planned my move, a profound sense of relief washed over me, signaling the promise of a new beginning. On the day of my departure, I sent a final message to my parents. I explained my decision in clear terms, knowing well they might not grasp my reasons. But it was important for me to articulate my stance. I needed to start anew for my own well-being and peace of mind.